Jim Comey has surfaced. Former FBI Director Jim Comey.
What's he doing now?
In relaxed, cool, black turtleneck and leather coat.
Sure it wasn't a dickie. Yeah.
On Morning Joe. You know, because he's a novelist now. Wasn't he always a novelist, mainly? Making up stories?
Oh.
Jim Comey joining a couple of eunuchs on the set of Morning Joe, including Willie Geist, who, nicely stayed within the parameters of what they agreed in this interview that came across more like a deposition. The Durham report, I know, the acting deputy director for counterintelligence over at FBI, she hadn't had a chance to read the Durham report yet. She's been busy. We know that from her testimony before a House committee last week. But what's Comey's take on the Durham report? This will aggravate you.
Do you acknowledge perhaps that some mistakes were made along the way?
Oh, definitely. And they were found 4 years ago by the Inspector General. So there's nothing new in this new document.
What were some of those mistakes from your point of view?
Oh, that the FBI didn't communicate clearly the status of certain sources. They didn't double check certain information before putting it in a court application for a foreign intelligence wiretap, and a bunch of others.
And so do you believe now, as some of these politicians call for defunding of the FBI, that has been corrected and that now the procedures are in place to avoid those kind of mistakes in the future?
I think so. But in complex investigations, there's always going to be mistakes. It doesn't mean the FBI is incompetent, honest, and independent.
So, Director, with some distance now from your time there with that investigation and everything that came into that 2016 election, are there things that you wish you had done differently?
Oh, plenty. I mean, plenty of small things. In the main, I think the FBI did it in the right way during a very difficult time in 2016.
There you go. Anything you would have done differently? You get an 8-second response. Oh, sure, things on the margins. But in the main, I was a steady hand on the wheel, and we ran a good shop over there.
I mean, did anybody ask him about the dossier?
No,
Anything?
no.
No.
Off limits.
Off limits. Oh, okay.
Well,
sorry.
he mentioned that, like some things we could have communicated better about to, like courts when you're getting like surveillance warrants. Yeah, I suppose. We shouldn't have taken op research and unvetted op research and just ran with it to do a massive counter intel investigation into setting precedent, I guess, blah, blah, blah. Old news. And, the current news, what we really need to talk about is people lying about the FBI.
Oh.
It's a hard time because a lot of people have internalized the lies they've been told. After the search of Mar-a-Lago, there were days of lies about the FBI acting as some sort of thug army. And that hurts because the FBI needs to knock on doors and get people's help. It needs to be able to stand up in a courtroom and say, I saw this thing, and not be seen as a political actor. They are not political actors, but the lies have an impact.
Yeah, not political actors. Do not ask what the FBI is doing to you or your fellow citizens. Ask what you could be doing for the FBI. Stop worrying about due process.
Well, Democrats get searched and Republicans get raided.
Trump.
Oh, yes.
His former boss.
Oh.
I think he poses a near existential threat to the rule of law. He will do everything he can in a new term to try to tear down the institutions that he sees as threats and to dismantle them and the people who occupy them, the apolitical people who occupy them. So there is a lot on the ballot in 2024 if he's a candidate, but the rule of law, in my view, is at the very top of the list.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Gotta go. Gotta head over to the publisher for, walkthrough on my new novel.
Yeah. See you guys later.
That's Jim Comey.
Wow.
All right. That's all fine and good. That will satisfy the MSNBC viewer and, keep them content in their cocoon, I have no doubt. For more on this, pleased to be joined by George Parry, former federal and state prosecutor, regular contributor to the American Spectator. He blogs at knowledgeisgood.net. George, yeah, some mistakes were made. We've talked about them. Stop sawing sawdust already.
Yeah, it's just all one big misunderstanding.
Some mistakes were made. Not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not like Comey had anything to do with it. It was just some underlings who didn't communicate well enough. But come on, give me a break. The interesting thing about that interview is he declined to be interviewed by Durham in the special counsel's office, as did Deputy Director McCabe and Peter Strzok, head of counterintelligence. And if it seems to me what should have happened here, and it remains to be seen whether or not this is actually what happened, but he should have been taken before the grand jury and cross-examined under oath and let him try and peddle that load of bilge under oath before a grand jury with a competent prosecutor cross-examining him.
Why didn't? Why was there no nexus to bring him in as a witness at any of those trials? Why didn't Durham do exactly as you say?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, when I read the Durham report, there are these footnotes in it saying, well, Comey declined to be interviewed, McCabe declined to be interviewed, Strzok declined to be interviewed. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, well, wait a minute. If I was running this investigation and I get a recalcitrant witness, I'm going to lay a grand jury subpoena on him. I'm going to take him into the grand jury, and then he's got a choice. He can testify or he can take the fifth. If he takes the fifth, then I'll give him use immunity and compel his testimony. And if he doesn't want to talk then he winds up in jail for contempt. As best as I can tell from reading the Durham report, none of that happened. And my question is, why didn't that happen?
Well, did Durham throw up his hands and surrender?
Well, he had. But he didn't. I mean, he didn't, at least to the extent that he brought three people to trial. And you would think that it would be relatively easy and sensible that it would pass, judicial scrutiny to say to a judge, we got to bring McCabe and Comey at minimum in here because we've got Sussman and Danchenko on trial, and these are material organizers of the information upon which FBI leadership relied to advance this investigation. And so we want to know what they knew about these guys.
Well, yeah, but even beyond that, I mean, think about this. The testimony that they got from people in the FBI, this is the Durham investigators and Durham himself, what they got from the FBI people who were willing to talk was that the witch hunt for Trump, the failure to use standard FBI procedures in vetting the information upon which they based their FISA warrants, and all the rest of the investigation, the smear of Trump that was done under the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, all of that was directed right from the top. It came from Comey, McCabe, and Strzok. And that's the conclusion of the Durham report. So the question becomes then, okay, if those are the big three, if those are the guys who drove this train wreck, why didn't you take them before the grand jury and get them under oath as to why they did it and exactly what they did?
What's your intuition? Why didn't he do it? I mean, and Kleinsmith too. Who told Kleinsmith to forge that document? Is that something that was done of his own volition, or was that an order? Where did it come from?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And there are other people in the FBI, Bill Priestep and other high officials, who also declined to be interviewed. And I'm just reading this thing and scratching my head and thinking, why isn't this a problem? I mean, I ran grand juries for close to 20 years. And whenever we had a recalcitrant witness or somebody who didn't want to talk, it was very simple. You just hit them with a subpoena and you take them into the grand jury and you pump them out. And I don't get why that didn't happen. Now, Durham is scheduled to appear before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence on June 20, where he's going to be asked about this stuff. And I'm really looking forward to that testimony because I'd like to hear his explanation. I wrote an article about this, and I declined to really just come out and condemn Durham because there may be a good explanation as to why he did what he did. But so far, I'm not seeing it, and I can't figure out why he wouldn't use the grand jury on these guys.
Well, what did President Obama and then VP Biden know about the dossier, and when did they know it?
Well, in August of 2016, when Crossfire Hurricane that is the FBI investigation was getting revved up, there was a meeting in the White House. There was a briefing given by CIA Director John Brennan to Obama, Vice President Biden, Director Comey, and other high administration officials. And Brennan tells them at this briefing that he has information about an alleged approval by Hillary Clinton of a proposal from one of her campaign advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by the Russian security services. They knew this was a Clinton dirty trick from day one. And Comey was notified of that at this briefing. And yet Comey continues to go ahead, full speed ahead, on investigating Trump. At the same time, Comey, number one, whenever they got information about possible foreign interference with the Clinton campaign, Comey and the FBI did not investigate that. Instead, they gave so-called defensive briefings to the Clinton campaign. In other words, they gave them a warning. Hey, there's a foreign influence threat here. You guys deal with it. Trump, in contrast, they came down like a ton of bricks on him. They hooked up these FISA warrants. I mean, the basis for the investigation, there is no basis for the investigation. That's one thing that Durham documents up one side and down the other. The basis for the FISA warrants, the entire investigation, it just wasn't there.
And Brennan
they went ahead and
right. And Brennan's somebody else who should be served with a subpoena. I mean, he's material to the story too. Something. Just to go something in this piece that you wrote, the Durham Report's missing piece over at the Spectator. I'm glad you pulled this quote back from the memory hole to the present, because I look at it in a new light given the January 6th prosecutions. The Lovebirds, Lisa Page, Trump's not going to become president, right? Strzok, no, he's not. We'll stop it. If that had been two knuckleheads on the Mall on January 6th, they would be facing seditious conspiracy charges. But when senior level FBI agents have that sort of exchange, that's just pillow talk?
Yeah, and when you understand that Strzok was head of counterintelligence for the FBI, and Lisa Page, who has been identified as an FBI lawyer, was in fact the special assistant to Andrew McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI. And they were regularly meeting with McCabe, laying out the strategy for this smear of Trump in the Trump campaign. So, these just weren't two people out there on the street engaging in small talk. This was right at the top of the FBI, and that was the mindset driving this. And, and it really, when you look at, when I was listening to Comey, that clip you played of Comey, and he's bemoaning the fact that the FBI is being viewed as a political police force. And he says, it's just all a bunch of lies. No, the FBI is a political police force. And Jim Comey and his predecessor, Robert Mueller, are responsible for that. They turned it into a political police force. It was Jim Comey who cleared Hillary Clinton of any charges when she had an unsecured email server on which she stored classified information. That was a clear violation. And Comey stands up and says, no reasonable prosecutor would take this case. Go and sin no more. I mean, it's just unbelievable what these people have done to the FBI, and people don't trust the FBI anymore.
And it's
That's
not getting
the big problem that this country's going to.
And it's not getting any better under Christopher Wray, as far as I can tell, despite Jim Comey's good housekeeping seal. Kevin McCarthy yesterday on Fox and Friends saying he's ready to move with a contempt charge against Wray. Take a listen.
Comer subpoenaed the document that he's requested. We have jurisdiction over the FBI, which they seem to act like we do not. I personally called Director Wray and told him he needs to send that document. Today is the deadline. So let me not just tell you, let me tell Director Christopher Wray right here, right now. If he misses the deadline today, I am prepared to move contempt charges in Congress against him. We have jurisdiction over this. He can send us that document. We have the right to look at that, Republicans and Democrats alike in that committee. And if he does not follow through with the law, we will move contempt charges against Christopher Wray and the FBI.
You know what he says,
they are
Mr.
not
Speaker?
above the law.
Well, we're going to find out because yesterday was the deadline, so we're going to find out what they do today. But the document they're talking about that House Oversight Committee Chairman Jim Comer has requested from the FBI is an unclassified document that alleges that Joe Biden took a bribe from an official of a foreign government. $5 million to be precise.
$5 million, yeah, $5 million, yeah. Well, I'm sure that Wray is just quaking in his boots at the idea of being held in contempt by Congress. Who's going to prosecute that case? Merrick Garland? I mean, Wray is over there. As far as I'm concerned, Wray when he read the Durham report, Wray came out with a statement. Well, we've put new procedures in place so that something like Crossfire Hurricane couldn't happen again. Come on, this wasn't a glitch in the system. This was driven from the top. The orders came from the top, and there are plenty of people in the FBI who are more than happy to carry out those orders. And Christopher Wray hasn't changed that. I mean, if you want to look at Wray's record, just look at what they do to Catholic abortion protesters. You've got these discussions or these memoranda in the FBI talking about putting informants into traditional Catholic parishes to root out dangerous elements. And it just goes on and on. During the Black Lives Matter marches in Washington, you had FBI agents in FBI jackets kneeling in solidarity with the demonstrators. I mean, that's our FBI today. And Comey can say, oh, gee, it's not a political organization. It sure as hell is. And it's a shame because the FBI I worked with all those years ago was a radically different organization. It was just give me the facts and we'll get on with doing our jobs upholding the law.
Yeah,
now, as far as I'm concerned,
I mean, the other thing is
the Democrats.
Well, the other thing with Christopher Wray, Crossfire Hurricane won't happen again. What are you talking about? Jim Comey said it was good. Jim Comey, you just heard him say on Morning Joe yesterday. Jim, some mistakes were made, but by and large, it was a clean investigation, and we're, by apolitical professional agents. So which is it? So maybe somebody can ask Wray about Comey or Comey about Wray, and let's start digging a little bit deeper and a little bit harder when we have the opportunity. The opportunities are few and far between because Jim Comey gets to pick his venues, although, as you point out, Durham shouldn't have let him escape a grand jury. But Christopher Wray has to be whistled before Congress if he wants to sing for his supper and get funding. So, I like that Comer and McCarthy are getting more aggressive. I'd like to see them get a lot more aggressive, a lot faster.
Well, I think the only tool they have of any consequence is dealing with the funding of the FBI.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
George Parry, former federal and state prosecutor, regular contributor to the American Spectator. He blogs at knowledgeisgood.net. George, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Well, so glad to be with you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM 560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Is your prostate secretly being destroyed without you knowing it? All the ads for these prostate pills like